Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Francis Entertainment Center, and next stories are The Survival of the Idiots and Dumped. Enjoy the video. SpongeBob and Patrick excitedly race to Sandy's Treedome to hang out with her. However, the entire dome has a metal cover on it and a "Keep Out" sign on the front door. In the entryway, they find a TV which turns on and plays a video of Sandy dressed for bed and gobbling on loads of acorns. The recording of Sandy explains that she's hibernating for the winter, that animals hibernate do not like being woken up, asks for no one to disturb her, including SpongeBob, as she said explicitly at the end of the video recording. However, even though prohibited to do so, Patrick opens the door anyway to reveal that the dome's environment is completely covered in snow. Then SpongeBob and Patrick quickly take delight in the snow, even being able to remove their water helmets because of the snow's moisture. They hear a strange noise from Sandy's treehouse. They go inside to investigate. They then discover that Sandy is many times her original size, bringing loads of acorns, and is sleeping soundly. At first, their gentle prodding and poking do nothing to wake her from her dreams, catching the outlaws Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry. Soon enough, though, their merrymaking takes its toll, and then Sandy suddenly wakes up, assaulting SpongeBob and Patrick in her sleepy stupor. She falls back to sleep in her bed. Patrick then makes a pair of earmuffs from his belly button lint, which SpongeBob places over Sandy's ears to prevent her from waking up. Then SpongeBob and Patrick leave her room to continue playing in the snow. They pretend to be the outlaws from Sandy's dream, but then they start fighting over which of them will play the part of being Dirty Dan. Their roughhousing causes Sandy's earmuffs to fall off, allowing her to hear all the noise, and she attacks them in further half-asleep fury, being battered and bruised in their winter storm growing more intense. SpongeBob and Patrick try to leave, but then they find that the door is frozen shut, leaving them trapped in the wintry Treedome until spring. Some hours later, SpongeBob and Patrick are covered in snow and they start shivering. Able to escape or survive in the cold weather, SpongeBob tries to take a piece of bark from the tree, but the sleep-talking Sandy, still thinking he is Pinhead Larry, threatens to put him in an iron lung. He takes it as a sign that he should put it back. They go into Sandy's room and, throwing cautions to the wind, rip off all her fur, their new fur-lined winter attire. SpongeBob proclaims that now they are ready for the longest, coldest winter ever. However, winter immediately comes to an end, and Sandy wakes up with her winter pounds shed. Sandy sees SpongeBob and Patrick outside from her window and is excited to see them. She then comes out of her treehouse, and Sandy is initially surprised and confused to see SpongeBob and Patrick wearing her fur. When she looks down at herself, she finds herself completely bald, causing her to scream in horror. This shock immediately turns into anger, and SpongeBob and Patrick realize that ripping her fur off wasn't a good idea after all. They now have to suffer the consequences. As a punishment for what they did, Sandy forbids them from leaving her home, and then drinks lemonade with them while their bodies are tied around her to provide her new spring coat to keep her warm until her fur grows back, much to SpongeBob and Patrick's discomfort and dismay. SpongeBob and Gary play tag. Patrick joins in and begins to get better acquainted with Gary. At the end of the day, Gary seems to want to spend time with Patrick a while longer, so SpongeBob agrees to let Gary have a sleepover at Patrick's house. The next morning, Gary's still reluctant to leave Patrick, who concludes that Gary wants to be with him permanently, and so claims him as his own pet. SpongeBob refuses to believe this, but when Gary is given the choice of who shall be his owner, Gary heads for Patrick. SpongeBob is heartbroken, and out of jealousy, he attempts to find a new pet to show Gary that he does not need a two-timing snail. First, SpongeBob gets Rex, a worm, and shows him off to Patrick and Gary. SpongeBob extols all the traits that make worms superior to snails, such as their loyalty. Rex promptly illustrates this by completely abandoning SpongeBob and hitching a ride on a bus. Next, SpongeBob brings home Larry, a snail with a terrible temperament. SpongeBob bends over backward to accommodate Larry, but Larry's unceasing viciousness leaves SpongeBob to remain forlorn, forced to give up his own bed to the picky and greedy snail. After failing to entertain Larry with a joke he said Gary loved, Larry probably completely abandoned SpongeBob like Rex did. Even the anatomically correct snail Jerry cannot fill the hole in SpongeBob's heart. Patrick, accompanied by Gary, stops by SpongeBob's house to do some laundry. In desperation, SpongeBob begs and pleads with Gary, offering him the privilege to do whatever he wants if he comes back. Patrick patronizingly tells SpongeBob to let it go, that Gary has already made his choice. Gary, meanwhile, crawls into the washing machine after Patrick throws his shorts in. SpongeBob and Patrick watch, and Patrick is angry that Gary apparently just likes him for his shorts. SpongeBob, however, realizes that all along Gary had only wanted the cookie that was in Patrick's pocket. Right after eating the cookie, Gary immediately returns to SpongeBob. SpongeBob and Gary now, satiated and reunited, going outside for a walk. A heartbroken and devastated Patrick stares at the door and asks, Gary, I thought what we had was special.